Welcome to another episode of the Elevate Collection podcast. We're so excited to introduce you to our friend, Deborah Olivia Farmer. Welcome to the podcast, Deborah.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Y'all, this episode is supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen. We won't even tell you the backstory, but y'all, I will tell you the backstory of Miss Deborah Olivia Farmer. She is a nationally respected media strategist and founder of Brown Farmer Media Group, a communications and impact agency. You see where that alignment is? But a leader trusted by government institutions, major brands, civic leaders, and cultural institutions for helping them shape narrative, lead through visibility, and communicate with purpose. A two-time author, From Fears to Families and My Journey to Joshua, chronically, y'all, I'm special. I can't say that hard. Why can't I say that? Chronicling her deeply personal and faith-filled journey through adoption, a cultural steward and community builder, co-founding The Masses, and serving on boards including Hiplet Ballerinas and The Block. She is a visible advocate for Black families, adoption, storytelling, representation, and faith-led leadership. And she also is incredibly beautiful, guys. So where did you start when you have a resume like this? Like, where did we start? Like, bring us back. You said Chicago, yes?
First off, when you hear your own bio or resume, you're like, who in the hell are they talking about?
Oh, that's me.
Me, huh? No.
You are that impressive.
Thank you so much. No, I'm from Chicago. So my journey began in local television. I worked for two major networks in Chicago. I worked for WGN Television, which actually stands for the world's greatest newspaper. Most people don't know that.
I did not.
Yeah. And I actually called it the White Guy Network, but that's me.
Digress.
Okay. And then I also worked for NBC5, which is a capacity of working as the face of the station, the bridge between the station and the community. So my career began in the late 90s, and I now have a full service communications firm after all those years of experience working in television.
Before
Yeah.
the years in television, like what's before the network? Like you. Career sounds cool, but you.
Me. So born in Chicago, south side of Chicago, very clear about the south
side
of Chicago. I attended high school actually in the suburb of Chicago. So I'm very clear. We moved outside of Chicago to the suburbs. So I went to Thornton Township High School. We had a radio and TV program in high school. So that gives you the context on the career side. But at my core, my roots, my family's from Barbados. My dad's from Barbados and my mom's from Mississippi. So I sort of look at myself as a blend between a Southern island girl. And so having that foundation of family from Barbados and again, being from Chicago, those are my roots. That's where I'm from.
What, through like taking your roots, is there a trait that you can attribute to your success that you learned at the core of who you are?
Yeah. So I actually, in 2015, I traced my roots to the Accra tribe in Ghana on my mom's side. And so we did a DNA test. It was a group of us from Chicago, some other, civic leaders, community leaders and such. And in that discovery, I shared with my grandmother who lived to 96 and shared it with my mom because when you trace on your mom's side, that's what you get. And it showed me the strength that I have in who I am because of my grandmother. When I think about my grandmother moving here from Greenwood, Mississippi to Chicago, in 1963 in El Dorado, she had 8 children, 4 girls, 4 boys. The through line is strength. And so that I think is what has shaped me to be who I am. In Ghana, the women actually fought the wars. And so, yeah, right. You like double take,
It's
right?
giving Black Panther.
No, seriously. And so as I'm like reading this history, I'm like, this is who I am.
Wow.
This is the strength of who I am when I think about my, lineage through my grandmother's roots, which again led us to Ghana. Yeah. So strength at my core is who I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go, because now I need to, because you said that, now I've got to look up, y'all bear with me. I want to look up the meaning of your name.
Okay. Well, I can tell you. So my dad actually named me after his mother. Olivia is my middle name. My grandmother's name, his mom's name was Olive. And Olive means peace. And so I know that to be said for my middle name. Deborah, it again, is what he named me. In the Bible, Deborah was a judge. And not only was she a judge, she was a prophet. And not only that, she actually was responsible for the war that was won in the Bible because Barak at the time was afraid to fight the war. And so she encouraged him to go and to fight. And so it's the whole Judges 5 is the whole story about Deborah. And so that's where my name originates from.
And now look at you, the gift of sight, helping people get their story seen.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. And that's interesting sight, because that almost kind of gave me a little bit of pause, because I actually dream. And so that's something I don't oftentimes share with folks, but I do have that, it is a gift. It has, for me, been something I've been running from for a good portion of my life, because it is pretty exhausting, to see things. And, I've called friends and I'm like, hey, you're getting married. One of my best friends, I called her when she was getting proposed to. The home that she bought, I saw the home, the levels of the home prior to her purchasing it. So that sight piece, my grandmother, my dad's mother, was also a seer. And so that's something I don't share too often, but I do have the ability to see things through dreams.
Oh, well, you were in the right spot, because we are a spiritual bunch.
Yeah.
We believe in using the gifts that have been handed to us and for the greater good and to create impact.
Yeah. And I will say that it's something that I'm settled into now. And I will tell you, it was after watching a podcast with Tabitha Brown, because she also
auntie
sees. And I was like, you know what? I need to stop running from this and just embrace it. And so, yeah.
How would you say that? Sorry, Alex.
No, because I think we're all on the same wavelength.
How would you say that has shaped your journey and your career?
Yeah, I think that's why I do impact work. That's why I do mission-driven work, right? If it's not connected to a cause, if it's not providing a service for someone, giving back in some way, I don't want anything to do with it. And so, it's been very instrumental in the choices that I make, with the types of clients that we take on, even the move from Chicago to Atlanta. I November of 2019, I was like, you know what, I'm moving. I was like, the Holy Spirit said, you know what, you're out of here. And so I made the move, but I'm very in tune with the path that God has me on. I know a lot of this that we tend to look at with life. It's really us being, and we were talking about God winks prior to coming on, listening to the Holy Spirit and Him directing you and the way that you should go. And so I say that to say it's very much a partner for me in business.
I love this. And I'm going to go backwards in a quick second. When you talked about running from that gift of sight, my question is, has that gift of sight hurt you or caused pain? Because they often say pain is where your pulpit is.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if there's a connection there for you.
Possibly, because I think when you suppress the natural, that's hurtful in a sense. So possibly, I think I remember clearly, even in high school, the church I attended, I would literally be in the office of the pastor after service talking to him about my dreams. And he would say, don't tell everybody, because then you're going to have folks reaching out to you to interpret their dreams. And so my friends, they laugh. They call me Miss Cleo, but to that end, I think because I have suppressed it for so long, could be that I've possibly caused myself a little bit of harm there.
Do you feel like your discernment is just dialed in next level because of your ability to see?
It is now. It hasn't always been. And interestingly enough, you say that I was just having that conversation prior to coming over here, especially with relationships, female relationships. I'm, a transplant from Chicago, trying to build the business, but also trying to build relationships. And because I'm an empath, and I'm one to oftentimes just sort of just give people, free reign, everybody's good, but no, they aren't. And so I haven't always tapped into my discernment, because I've just been I've been too open. I've been too oh, no, everybody's a good person. Hey, let's be friends. And I'm a Gemini too. So I'm not trying to put in I don't want to say lead into astrology in any way, because there's only the creator for me, God. But in that, I'm just so open to everybody. Everybody's my best friend, and I believe the best in everyone, and that's not the case. And so I haven't fully, been discerning.
That is my story, through and through. And Alex and I joke that the silly song, she'll know what she's doing. She's just giving it out. That's me.
Yes.
What? Because I'm
She's preaching.
Everyone.
I'm like, girl, shut up.
I literally I've
me
been
too.
reading the book, be quiet or whatever.
No, me too. No, seriously. And you have to, and I think for me, I have to intentionally shut that down, because that's my level set. I immediately go to, that's my default, to just give and to help. And you can't. And, even in the rejection sometimes that you get from people that don't give back to you, not turning to that way, if that makes any sense. So
100%.
You still have to stay in your core. If you are a giver, don't have PTSD.
how to not get jaded.
Yeah.
That's something I've really struggled with
Yeah.
because I give and I pour and I
For
do.
certain.
And then I'm like, and we talk about it in business too. Like we've given
Yeah.
and given and
Oh,
given to you, but now I'm asking you for a very minimal fee,
Are you
and now
kidding
no
me?
one's.
Are you kidding me? I compare myself, although my name is Deborah, I compare myself to Joseph in the Bible. And so in that, when I moved here, I felt like Joseph when he was in prison, falsely, of course. And the cupbearer, you're like, so I had a couple of my colleagues back home and who I hoped that would help me to make some inroads here. And they just didn't. I was like, what? They just left me stranded, And so to that end, we have to put our trust in God, not in man.
It's so interesting because I love this. As I'm sitting here, I feel like we're at these different stages of that particular journey or that lesson, because that was me many, many years ago. And then I came out of the other side to where I tend to be like an extremist, where I'm either that, like, oh my God, here's the shirt off my back, like whatever, if it doesn't matter if it hurts me, here, give. And then I would go all the way to the opposite end where I would be so closed off and so protected. So it's been such a beautiful journey because I feel like, especially my relationship with Jordan, we are kind of coming into this middle. And I feel like you have saying, I'm sure there's areas for growth as we all are, but seeing you sit here with such poise and such grace about your discernment and your gift of sight, like, yes, you're tapping into it, but I think it's such a beautiful thing to be said about the journey that is learning how to love and giving grace without giving like this like unrestrained mercy to people, but allowing grace and moving in grace when you're interacting with other people, or not having the expectation of you from someone else.
Yeah,
I think
that's
is one of the
good.
biggest lessons that I feel like we're walking through. And like, I'll speak for myself. Like, I know that I'm walking through that, and I'm like, I thought I healed from it, and then something slaps you in the face. You're like, okay, clearly I have not made that much progress, because it's
Show yourself grace,
oh,
right?
that's the
And so
hardest
that's
part.
my constant reminder here. This tattoo reads grace. You have to constantly show yourself grace, even in being an overgiver and, wanting to give the shirt off of your back. It's okay if someone doesn't give that back to you and you feel like, oh my goodness, here it is. I shouldn't have gone that far again. You have to show yourself grace in that.
Alex actually sent me a reel not long ago that said that when you tell somebody what you're working on or what you're doing, it actually releases the same amount of dopamine as completing the task. And so a lot of times that one step where it gives you that hit of dopamine can demotivate you from moving forward with the task. And I thought that was so interesting. And we've been working on a thing. It's like, what's the intention of saying these things? Like, why am I telling you I'm doing this? Or why am I giving you this information? And it's really been interesting to slow down and think about those things.
Yeah, the thing that I just took away from what you said is slow down. Because I think for me, that's something I have to learn to do, is to slow down. You said your immediate response is to give and all the things, and your heart is in the right place. The intentions are pure, but still slow down. You don't have to, right? And to what you just said, why am I doing that? Why am I sharing or oversharing or whatever we're doing? It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's exhausting.
Being a business owner and a founder and a creator and a creative, it's a challenge.
Yeah, and I was even told that rejection is physical pain. And so in that, imagine, you have to look that up. And I was like, that could be why you feel such a way, if someone doesn't return a call or an email, it's rejection. And so I know for me, my go-to is I just take a nap. I'm like, I just need to take a moment. But just understanding that level of rejection is physical too, in some cases.
Same.
You can see it.
Interesting segue into one of the core themes that you talk about, that you write about, and you speak about is motherhood and foster care and adoption. Can you walk us through the journey of how that became one of your core themes in your life?
Yeah. So I always say, I'm a natural nurturer, right? But the other thing that I say is I was always a mom. My grandmother, again, having 4 girls, 4 boys, my mom is the oldest of her girls. And I have a cousin, she just turned 50 a couple days ago. And so I'm 2 years older than she is. And we used to play house. Everybody, all the kids played house when they were little. And my grandmother would tease any chance she could when she got around family, friends. She would say, Debbie would never let Nikki be the mama. Because I would always say, well, it's going to be 2 mamas. I wasn't giving that up. So I just feel like I was always a mama. Like and to that end, I have 6 godchildren. The young lady that I met that was in foster care, it was literally supposed to be a 1-year relationship of me tutoring her. And here it is, 25 plus years, she's still in my life. She's my daughter. My grandmother would say, "Where's your daughter?" Like, and she was literally just a mentee. So that's where it began for me. I think just, having that natural instinct to mother, to help, to provide, to give, and all those things came in for me really early and young.
How are you taking that experience and that knowing inside of you to create impact now?
Yeah, I think when I find myself, especially if I'm partnering with an organization, I oftentimes tend to find the junior level person on whatever team and take on a motherly role for them to help them through whatever internal dynamics they may be having on their work at their workplace. Even some of the folks that work for me, in as much as they are my peers, but I do sort of kind of nurture them through a situation that they may be having at home or even with the economy. If we're slow on getting clients and things of that sort, just still providing that motherly advice that might be needed to which bill do you pay if you can't pay them all right now. So that's just something it just comes naturally for me.
So impressive. When it comes to foster care, I just want to touch on this a little bit. We
Yeah.
actually are partnering with a nonprofit locally
Hmm.
called Jambos, and they provide new pajamas to kids in the foster care system, which
Oh,
we
I love
love, of
that so
course.
much.
This is our second year doing it for the holidays, but something that's so interesting is, I think, the narrative around foster care. Would you like people to know about foster care, and what narrative are you reshaping?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I think the one thing that I want to just kind of wrap around the conversation is, why are we whispering about this? Like, I think this needs to be a loud conversation. You're talking about 400,000 children in foster care. That's a big number, right? And so, what are we doing to provide some level of support to a system that clearly is needing help? I don't want to say broken, but it needs some help. And so I just want us to speak loudly about, this is an issue. This is as much as and we grew up in a time, and I'm aging myself here, where a lot of the shows that we watched, they dealt with these issues. Punky Brewster, she was in foster care. She was adopted by an old white guy in Chicago. And here it is. We didn't, it was nothing to it for us to see these types of shows, right? And you look up and you see Different Strokes, Arnold and Willis, they were in foster care, then they were adopted by Mr. Drummond. This Is Us, did it not have us during the pandemic, like heaving, crying so
Yeah.
hard, watching those stories, right? And so I just want this to be a normalized conversation. And I'm really hoping, especially for women, and not just women, but I'm saying especially because we just are naturally nurturers, right? And so when I was going through my process to foster my son, I had so many friends that were like, "Oh my God, this is great. I've always wanted to do it." And I'm like, "Well, why are you not doing it?" And I think a lot of it is misinformation. It's the fear. It's for me, I'm just trying to debunk the myths. Most people assume that children in foster care are going to, come and terrorize your home. Yes, they are coming from traumatic situations where the home was broken for whatever reason. So why not you look at yourself as a safety net? Why can't you come in and position yourself, if you have love in your heart, if you have capacity to bring, a child into a loving home, you can be a part of the solution. That's one of my favorite quotes by Shirley Chisholm. Get off the sidelines and be a part of the solution and not the problem.
That's so beautiful. And I love what you're doing and the
Thank
mission that
you.
you're spreading. And how are you bringing that back into the workplace?
Yeah, I think the workplace balance piece can come into play here. I think sometimes we are overstretched in work, right? And I think if we could focus in, I mean, it's the holiday season, focus in on family. And so for me, it's just really trying to balance out. You can still be a parent, you can still work, be a business owner, you can elevate your career, but you also can still have capacity to be involved in a child's life or create your family through foster care and adoption. So balance would be how I would think to have that conversation.
So you come from a place, obviously, like media,
Hmm.
PR, communications, and strategy. When it comes to changing this narrative, what conversation do you wish you could start outside of just like, if you have love in your heart, but like what conversations do you wish that you could start from a more of a top down, like corporate level? Like if you had to, how Jordan said, putting it in the workplace, like how would you create some strategy around starting that conversation in a non familial environment? Like people, of course, it's low hanging fruit to talk about this in like what churches. It's low hanging fruit to talk about it in nonprofits. Low hanging fruit to talk about it in like Girl Scouts and boy, like those obvious things. But if as a strategist, when it comes to communications PR, if we were to have this conversation on a corporate level, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a darn good question. And I think it really starts with the branding of the topic, right? So most people don't really, they kind of know about foster care, but do they really? And so I think it would be a brand awareness campaign within the corporate structure. I worked in community affairs for many years. And so we partnered with nonprofit organizations. And as an internal organization, at the end of the year, we did a United Way campaign, right? So why can't this be a part of the United Way campaign? Why, when you give to the Salvation Army, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, why is there not maybe a social service agency that can be on the roster of your giving? And so I think just branding the awareness that this is an issue. I think a lot of organizations that have been successful, from Red Cross to, March of Dimes, when you're talking about prematurity for birth month, it's because of the branding. So the organization, that the corporate structure is aware that this is something that they should incorporate into the DNA of their business model.
I think you're so right, though, because I can think about all of my years that I spent in corporate, and there were a lot of them where we learned about all kinds of things and resources, but no one ever talked to us about that. And I'm trying to think about where in my life I would have discussed something like foster care.
It would have been on a nonprofit side.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I'm trying to disrupt right now. Like, why are we not talking? This is a national crisis. What are you talking about? 400,000 children that need a loving home?
Well, and it's even crazy when we think about partnering with Jambus, right? Like their mission is to give a pair of pajamas to a child when they enter a home, because a lot of times they come with nothing. And so you're moving in late in the evening, middle of the night kind of situation, and you don't even have a fresh pair of pajamas to put on. Like that was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Or even like the organizations that do like the suitcases or the bags.
Yes.
Because they are moving with garbage bags.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will tell you, some social service organizations might tell you different. They may want to debunk that is the theory, that they're leaving in garbage bags in the middle of the night. But that's the perception. That's what most people assume. So if they're assuming that, there's got to be something there, right?
100%.
So how do we change that? I love this pajamas piece. I'm going to give you guys some pajamas to donate for me. That's so sweet. I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, and we would love to connect anyone who is interested in Jambus. Rebecca over there is just an incredible asset. They do a lot of great programming throughout the community. They just partnered with the Atlanta Gladiators and did like a night where they threw pajamas onto the ice during the game for them to go and collect it.
And pajamas is such a sweet thing, right? When you think about, even for the holidays, everybody's like, am I going to be in matching pajamas?
Since I was a kid, my grandmother has gifted myself pajamas on, like, we get the every year pajamas. And then now it's like a tradition. Like my kids my grandmother always is the one who is giving all the kids Christmas pajamas.
Yes.
Our Christmas tree tradition is to take pictures in front of the tree eating pajamas. Yeah.
Same.
But it's interesting too, as Rebecca said, that the most underutilized or most underserved community are the teenagers.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to buy the cute little baby pajamas, but it's the larger size. And most of the teenagers are in adult sizes now. So anytime anyone asks us, and we're like, yeah, I get the teens. Because
that's going to make me cry.
Oh, even think about like Angel Tree kids. Like for someone that, like, I mean, I was an Angel Tree kid, and so was Jordan. But like you think of those organizations, or even when we've done like the Denver Dream Center and the organizations, it's always the teens that are getting looked over because they're not as quote unquote easy to shop for.
Well, and their numbers are really high too to be in foster care, because some agencies, and I hate to say it like this, but when you fill out your paperwork for foster care, they ask you how old do you want the child to be, and most people want like 0 to 2. Right. And so you have this number where now agencies understand that, and you have children that are 9 years old, that 9 to 13, that's a hard year to place children. And then multiple children, families of children. And most people just want their one cute little baby, but it's the 9-year-olds to 13-year-olds that are like stuck. And then the 9 becomes a 10-year-old and it's a lot.
Are there any other like projects or things that you're working on right now that you're equally passionate about?
Yeah, we talked about Massive. And so Massive is an organization that we put together where it's a bunch of creatives. I'm gonna say we, but it's really Bame Joyner, who's the guy that started Atlanta Influences Everything, guy named
Truth.
Carl Carter with Snake Nation, and a young lady named Kimana Paulus with the Georgia Entertainment Association. And so with that, it's really just a way to bring in creatives to the economy, right? And so
Mhm.
we actually just in September did a trip to South Africa with the Atlanta delegation to just sort of talk about the creative economy. And so that's something that I'm very passionate about right now because there are lots of opportunities in the creative space, especially here in Atlanta, with the World Cup coming, FIFA
Mhm.
next
Mhm.
year. So yeah, so that's something I'm working on. And then just really just again more around the advocacy work with foster care and adoption. And then the holidays with the kiddos, that's a project in itself.
That's always a project. And you've written 2 books.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about the books?
Yeah, so the first book was My Journey to Joshua, and it just sort of talks about the journey. Like, how did I get there from being introduced to foster care in the late 90s? And then talks about the family focus. And then from Fears to Families, after I went through the process of adopting my son, there were a lot of people that were very happy for me, but they also wanted to foster or adopt, and they never did. And so it was for me to just, again, as a fixer, trying to find a way to give them a resource guide to help them get across the finish line. Because I just felt they were just stuck in fear. And there are only 2 emotions, as we know, fear and love. So I really want people to lean into love.
I love that. Now, from fears to families, is that like a follow-up to your journey to Joshua?
It is. Yeah, it's a step-by-step guide, and so it sorta just gives you, "Hey, Josh is he's 10 years old, by the way, now, so it's been a nice little journey," and it really provides resources and tools for individuals that might be considering fostering or adopting. So how do you research the agency? I sort of look at it, again, it's like a job. You literally, if you're looking for a new place of employment, you have to do research on
Right.
these organizations. And so you do the same for the social service agency that you might want to get your foster care license through.
So now as we sit here after this conversation, knowing someone's listening, and all it takes is one, someone in our community, in our space, in our network, if there's anything that anyone under the sound of our voices can do to move your needle forward, what would that be?
It would be to, of course, support the mission. This is, a passion project of mine, from Fears to Families, the nonprofit, all the things. But it would really be to encourage someone that that's in your sphere of influence to actually move from fears to families. And so if they are considering fostering or considering adopting, I'm hoping that you would, encourage them to even send me an inbox message. I could definitely be the cheerleader that they need to get across the finish line, but to help them move forward in a space of love. Because if you have that in your heart to be a parent, I would hope that that's fulfilled through, if that's your thought, foster care and adoption. So that would be my hope, that you champion someone else that might be sort of on the fence here.
That's so special. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Elevate Collection podcast. We are so excited to welcome you into the Elevate family, and we can't wait to work alongside of you in the Atlanta community and hopefully Chicago and all across the country. And we hope that we can build community around the foster care community and adoption space. And of course, link you with Jambos and continue
Yes.
to make an impact and do lots of great work together.
Thank you so much. This was really, really nice. I'm so excited to have had this opportunity. Yes.
We'll see you soon.